Hey there, I'm David Kadavy, and you are listening to the WP Elevation Podcast.
G'day, Troy Dean from WP Elevation, and welcome to episode 55 of the WP Elevation Podcast. Our feature guest this week is David Kadavy, author of Design for Hackers. David wrote an epic blog post to get a speaking gig at South by Southwest and instead landed himself a book deal with Wiley to write Design for Hackers, which then went on to debut at number 18 on all of Amazon, not just in his category, but all of Amazon. It debuted at number 18, which is no mean feat. And I'm keen to learn how he did that and how the book deal came about. David and I also talk about salsa dancing, tango, Tim Ferriss, blogging, and everyone's favourite font, Comic Sans. David, of course, is giving away a copy of his book. Well, not of course, it's very kind of him, actually. He's giving away a copy of Design for Hackers, which is valued at $40. So stick around for details on how you can enter that competition a little bit later on. Stay with us. Let's elevate.
This is the WP Elevation Podcast, helping WordPress consultants elevate.
This episode of the WP Elevation Podcast is brought to you by Video User Manuals, the original, the best, the only way to teach your clients how to use WordPress. This plugin puts over 60 video tutorials in the back end of your client's WordPress dashboard, teaches them how to use WordPress as an editor, and also teaches them how to use the WP SEO plugin by Yoast and how to use WooCommerce. Of course, you can turn all of the videos individually or groups of them on or off to hide what functionality you don't want your clients to see. You can rebrand it, put your own logo on it. You can add your own videos to it. You can set it up just the way you like it and then save your master profile so that you can install it in a couple of seconds on new client sites moving forward. It really is fabulous. And you can get it for only $1 for your first month, which is just nuts. Take it for a spin, see how it works. And then it upgrades to, I think it's $24 a month these days for a developer license. So for $24 a month, you can have this thing installed on all of your client sites to automate your client training. Check it out at wpelevation.com/VUM, where you can see a video of the plugin in action and check out a little role play that my wife and I did to show you how you could possibly use the plugin to win more sales, win more clients. It's quite funny. Anyway, the elevation tip this week is stay curious. I think it was Steve Jobs that said stay hungry and stay foolish. Well, I'm saying stay curious. We talk a lot about curiosity in this episode, and David says that staying curious and finding that convergence between what you're curious about and what your clients need is a sweet spot to be, because no one can compete with you. If you are in the flow, in the zone, if you are doing exactly what it is you should be doing, no one can compete with you. So stay curious. It definitely has helped me in my business. Keep your eyes and ears open and your mind open and stay curious about what is around the corner. David Kadavy, of course, is the author of Design for Hackers. He wrote a blog post in order to try and get a speaking gig at South by Southwest. He shared that blog post on Hacker News. It went straight to top front page of Hacker News, got tons of votes, and he didn't get the talk at South by Southwest, but he got so much traction with the blog post that he got a book deal with Wiley to write Design for Hackers, which he subsequently wrote, launched, and it debuted at number 18 on all of Amazon, which is an incredible story in itself. He now doesn't do much client work. He spends most of his time teaching other people about the fundamentals of design. It's a fascinating interview. You're going to learn a lot. Stay curious. Let's go and meet David Kadavy. G'day, Troy Dean from WP Elevation, and I am very pleased to have with me all the way from, I'm guessing, the US of A, David Kadavy. Hey, David, how are you?
Hey, how's it going, Troy? Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
I am in the US, by the way.
Cool. Whereabouts are you based exactly?
I'm based in Chicago.
Oh, I was just there a few months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was there for Chicago WordCamp.
Oh, okay. I think I remember seeing that. Did you see any big buildings while you were here?
I did. Man, I love Chicago. Chicago's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful...
I love the architecture. It's what's one of the main reasons why I live here.
Oh man, I did the boat tour down the river, the architecture boat tour. It was amazing. It was a stunning city, really beautiful. I had a good time there. I had like 3 or 4 days off just roaming around the city. It was really, really beautiful.
And you were here when it wasn't winter too, which is also
That's
key
right.
to enjoying.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
And I'm a huge fan of the Blues Brothers. So, I went out to Wrigley Field and I did some sightseeing stuff and I went down to Buddy Guy's Blues Bar and caught some blues and, it was amazing.
You did it all. You got the architecture, you got the blues, you got Chicago, the word camp. I
That's
mean,
it.
there's nothing else.
That's right. And it was windy, so,
And it was windy. So you got it all.
I got it all.
Experience.
It was fabulous. Before we get into this interview, David has very kindly organised a copy of his book, Designed for Hackers, which has a cover price of $40 on it. We're giving a copy away of that today. Well, David is, during the interview. So stick around for details on how you can enter that competition a little bit later on. Okay, David, before we start, and so for those that don't know, David is an author of a book called Designed for Hackers, and we're going to be talking, I'm assuming, a lot about design during this interview. But before we start talking about design and web and all that kind of cool stuff, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh boy, there were so many different things that I wanted to be. I wanted to be a mad scientist. I wanted to be a professional bowler.
Really?
I wanted to be a professional fisherman. I wanted to have my own professional fishing show.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to be a professional golfer, but then I also wanted to be a professional artist. So I was so bad at all those other things that I got interested in drawing and eventually became a designer. So
Right. The underlying theme here is that whatever you wanted to do it professionally, right?
Well, yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the point of being something when you grow up is that you have to be a professional, that somebody pays you, and so, yeah, you're right, yeah.
So you had
Wanted to get
no
paid.
ambition to be an amateur bowler or an amateur pilot or anything like that? It was always professional.
I actually am an amateur bowler
Oh.
right now. I went bowling once a couple months ago, and
Cool.
and nobody paid me for it, so I guess that makes me an amateur bowler.
In fact, it cost you money, right?
In fact, it did cost me several dollars. Yeah,
Right.
true.
Have you seen The Big Lebowski, one of my favorite Coen brothers films? Yeah, yeah.
I love that's a great movie. I love
Isn't
that
it?
movie. Yeah.
Isn't it? It's that great scene in the bowling alley where Jesus pulls the gun off.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm not going to.
Duke abides.
Go see it. It's fantastic. I love it. If you haven't seen The Big Lebowski, that's my tip this week. Go and watch The Big Lebowski. When did you discover the internet and think, oh, hang on a second, here's something in this?
I think it was probably 1995 or 96, something like that. A friend introduced me to AOL, and I was just like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I remember actually, I think it was maybe 96 or so that I made my first web page, even. And
Wow.
I used whatever web space AOL was giving you at that time. And I don't even know how I managed to do it. I just sort of did it. And then I do remember, editing some of the code a little bit as well. So yeah, 95, 96 is when I made my first web page even. So
Awesome.
It's almost 20 years ago.
You really were an early adopter. Did you know instantly that it was going to be something that you were going to spend a lot of time doing?
I mean, it just became something that I spent a lot of time doing, that was for sure. But I mean, I was maybe too young to even think about whether it was, going to be the wave of the future or something. It seemed apparent. I just remember being really, I grew up in Nebraska, kind of middle of nowhere. And I just remember being very excited about being able to connect with people from all over the world. Like the fact that I was even like chatting with somebody from Virginia or something, I mean, which now we're doing this thing and you're in Australia over video, was just like, I got a rush out of that. Kind of being able to connect with the world that way.
Were you, it's really funny. There's kind of this common thread when I interview internet entrepreneurs who they found this sense of community online because they felt like they kind of didn't fit into the real world.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, yeah, not only did I grow up in Nebraska, but I'm kind of strange, so I didn't necessarily fit in my neighborhood. I didn't want to play kickball, so I would sit in my room and draw, and then when I got a computer, then I could chat with people online, and that was really fun. And then it's been wonderful to actually be able to connect with people based upon around interests instead of, this kid lives around the block from me, so now I have to hang out with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that definitely was a factor for me.
And it's funny, isn't it? Like all those. I occasionally get people I went to school with reach out and try and connect with me on Facebook, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. We weren't friends in school for a reason.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
We're not going to be
Don't you get
friends
it?
now.
I mean, maybe you look at there and you're like, that person's life is terrible, so I win.
Yeah, well, I'm not the only one that's had that thought, right? Do you remember the first time? I actually don't know how involved you are or how much you use WordPress, but I'm going to make an assumption that you know about WordPress. Do you remember the first time you saw the WordPress dashboard?
I don't think that I remember in particular. I have sort of a vague recollection of being really impressed. I started my blog in 2004, over 10 years ago. It's been 10 years since I started blogging. I started on blogger.com. And then I wasn't on there for especially long before I moved to what was then like the top CMS, which was Movable Type.
Mm-hmm.
And wrestled with that for a few years. And then I vaguely remember that I tried WordPress and I was so impressed that I was willing to go through the painful process of making the migration. That must have been, I think that might have been around 2008 or so that I actually did that. But it was, definitely a force of like, all right, this is clearly better. I can't be in this movable type path anymore. I have to move over to WordPress. And so my blog is currently on WordPress. I've got a lot of different sites on WordPress, actually. So
cool.
It's my CMS of choice.
How do you describe what you do in one sentence when people meet you for the first time? What's your elevator pitch, so to speak?
It depends upon the context, but I generally just say I teach people about design. In this context, I guess I teach people who aren't designers typically about design, and even more broadly, I like to teach people how to succeed in whatever way that they need to through design or other entrepreneurial things surrounding that.
I'm just looking at sorry if I'm looking away, I'm looking at your website as we're speaking, because I'm getting a sense of, where you're visible and where you hang out and the kind of things that you do. Have you, being someone who speaks about design and teaches about design, I'm curious, it's completely off topic, is speaking at a TEDx conference something that is kind of on your radar or on your to-do list?
I actually have a TEDx talk. And it's called The Literacy of Design, the new literacy of design. I'm sorry, I forgot. It was over a year ago.
Cool.
It doesn't look like a TEDx talk because if you look at it, there's not like a big TED sign or whatever. But it was at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, and it was a lot of fun making that talk. So people should check it out if they.
Yeah.
Got
I'll stick a link.
Minutes.
I'll stick a link in the to that in the show notes. I'll find it and I'll stick a link to that in the show notes. How did that come about? How did it come about? I mean, because I know a lot of the people I talk to like that is like the ultimate. As a speaker, speaking at a TEDx conference is like the ultimate thing that they want to achieve. Was that a fairly easy process for you, or?
Yeah, I mean, I got invited by somebody in Chicago who was organizing the conference, and obviously I accepted that, and I saw it as an opportunity to kind of present the broader idea of why I do what I do. Which, if you watch the talk, it's basically just that visual design is this new type of literacy that we're already learning about. Visual design right now. I can say Comic Sans, Times New Roman, Arial. All of your listeners have an image in their head because of that. just right off the bat. 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. So it's already happening. It's a fundamental thing that people need to know in order to succeed, is to understand design. So I saw it as an opportunity to sort of present the overarching reason why I do what I do.
Cool, and thank you. Now I've got Comic Sans stuck in my head and will probably be there for days. It's like one of those bad jingles that you can't get out of your head, you know?
Garamond. Does that help?
What do you actually spend most of your time doing day to day? Are you on the crayon still, so to speak?
On the crayon, yeah. I actually do spend a lot of time. So I launched a video course based upon my book over the summer. That was a long project. That was a lot of work. Right now, I'm kind of in an exploratory phase, trying to figure out like what's the next thing I want to help people with. So I actually do a lot. I call it R&D, just like a lot of reading different things, trying to make different connections between different ideas, blogging, lots of exploration. I mean, that's pretty much been my business model. That's where the book that I wrote came from, that process of just kind of connecting different ideas. And so I try to definitely give myself a lot of time to just explore. Because that's really, when I was alone at home in my room when everybody else was playing kickball, that was what I did, was just sit there and explore. And then eventually some things converge and a good idea comes out. So I'm kind of in the process of trying to figure out what that next idea is.
And so are you completely out of doing client consulting work? Are you just now in the kind of education scene?
Yeah, when I was doing client work, it was never to be a freelancer, and I think that's probably true for a lot of your listeners. Some of them maybe enjoy freelancing, or they need the income, they have other obligations and stuff. But when I started freelancing, it was more to free up my own time, and so when I did that, I just made sure I picked like a couple really excellent clients, and I had fantastic clients, and I just would bill like 10 hours a week was my target, and then the rest of the time I spent trying to build passive revenue so that I could. The ultimate goal was just to free up my mind and be able to be in this position that I'm in right now, where I can follow my curiosities. If I want to read a book about neuroscience and try to think of some way to work that into what I'm doing, then I can do that. So it was always sort of a means to an end for me when I was doing consulting.
We're going to talk a little bit more about, I'm curious as to, your process for finding those clients, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that keeps you awake at night about your current situation?
I guess I think it's got to be just not always knowing what I'm going to do next. Like I said, I don't necessarily know what I'm going to do next, and I've learned over time to definitely really trust my curiosity. And trust that it will lead me to really amazing places, and that has happened. That has proven to be true time and time again. But it's kind of a scary process because, I'm not super money driven. So like anytime I have an opportunity where it's just like, oh, I could easily make a bunch of money if I just do this. My brain is just like, nah, well, let's play with something else. And so that's. I kind of that's my process, and it can be a little bit scary at times to just go into the abyss of like where your curiosity takes you, and trust that everything's going to converge and make sense at some point.
How do you resist the lizard brain kind of just going after the financial rewards?
Yeah. Well, the lizard brain takes over. The lizard brain takes over if and when I reach a point where there's things that I want and I don't have the money to do it, or I don't have. And I'm also a pretty fiscally conservative person. I have a lot of savings. I've always invested and saved money. That I have to have a certain point before I start to that lizard brain turns off. But once that lizard brain turns off, I'm just like, all right, I want to play. I don't really care about, bringing my income to this next level, unless it's going to be fun. Unless it's going to be something that's fun and interests me and helps other people and is just overall rewarding. So,
what do you do when you're not working? How do you stay balanced?
so I'm addicted to learning stuff. I think is probably the best way to summarize it. I take a lot of classes, and which is very fitting because I create learning material for people. I've got a free course on design at designforhackers.com. I've got the book to teach people design. I've got the video course. So I think that, to be somebody who creates those things, it really helps to be a fan of those things as well, a fan of learning. So I take, here in Chicago, which is a great place to explore different interests, I've taken improv, sketch writing, acting classes. I've taken singing lessons, voice lessons. I took sailing lessons over the summer. That was great. I love to dance. I took salsa. I took a year and a half or so, or 2 years of salsa and bachata. I'm actually going to go to a salsa class after this interview.
Wow.
I took maybe a year and a half of tango, which also, by the way, like I went I tend to travel a lot. I'll go to places for a couple months at a time, especially in the winter in Chicago. So I went to Buenos Aires for 2 months a few years ago after I wrote my book and took private tango lessons. I went to all these tango lessons. I came to Chicago and I took more tango lessons. I took tango lessons for like a year and a half. I still can't tango dance. That is hard. It's hard. Salsa, way easier.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are just a few of the things I like. Really, besides reading, I guess when I'm reading books, it's usually nonfiction, R&D in a way, but I find it fun. But I just try to express myself creatively any way that I can, and I find that really keeps my work fresh as well. But that's what I love to do. I just love to learn new things.
Have you been reading lots of Tim Ferriss by any chance? Because I know Tim Ferriss is a big fan of Buenos Aires and a big fan of the tango.
I mean, yeah, I'm a huge Tim Ferriss fan. I read 4 Hour Work Week probably, I think it was 2007 or so. And as you might have noticed if you have heard what I've been talking about and you're familiar with that book, my entire life is pretty much modeled off of that idea of, find ways to free up your brain and pursue your passions. I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to him for the work that he's done and the things he's opened my eyes to. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, the man's a freak, isn't he? I'm a huge fan of Tim Ferriss as well. And you're right about the tango. My wife and I did kind of an introductory class recently. She's a pretty good dancer. I'm okay. But we did some tango, some salsa, some rumba, some cha-cha, some jive. And I don't understand the tango at all, man. It doesn't even look like dancing. It's like I'm counting the beat and looking at their feet, and it makes no sense to me whatsoever.
It's one of these things where, you're connected to your partner, and there's very little margin for error. Whereas salsa, you're a little bit further away. Bachata is side to side. You're not going to run into each other. Something like merengue is the easiest. It's 2 steps. You're not going to run into each other. That's generally that's my theory of like what makes a dance easy or hard. But yeah, I love dancing in part because it's not being on a computer. It's interacting with a person.
Yeah.
And I think people who spend a lot of time on computers, you can forget sometimes. You can lose that humanity of just like being able to cooperate with a person.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. There's no undo in the real world, is there? There's no Apple Z in the real world.
Nope. There's There's no undo. There's just, oops, sorry. Let's try that again.
This kind of ties into the question about what keeps you awake, but if you had a magic wand and you could fix one thing right now from a business point of view, what would it be?
I guess I'm somebody who really struggles with delegation. And I've watched all these different friends that have similar sort of business models who have that management thing where they can hire somebody and manage them and get them to create stuff and take care of different responsibilities. And it seems to come naturally to them, or they have experience with it from when maybe they were actually playing kickball when they were kids or something. But that really doesn't come naturally to me. And I did make a conscious effort maybe a year ago to start delegating things. I have an assistant now. I use Fancy Hands for certain tasks, but those are all and I use Odesk for outsourcing certain things. But it's hard for me. It's hard for me, and if I could wave a magic wand and be able to find talented people to help me with the not so straightforward step 1, step 2, step 3 parts of my business, that would be the thing that that would be the thing that I would change. But in some ways, I try to after I struggle through trying to learn how to delegate, I do have to remind myself every 6 months or so, just like, you know what, this isn't something that comes natural to you. Let's take some time there's some advantages to not having a big team of people that you have to worry about, And so I try to go back to what's natural to me every once in a while, but then at the same time push myself. But that's one thing I wish I could just do.
So is it the actual documenting of the processes, or is it letting go of the control that you find challenging?
Part of it's letting go of control. I think I view my entrepreneurial work to me is an artistic process. It's an expression of my passions and my talents and my interests and what's natural about me and where's the intersection between that and the market. And so I take a lot of pride in quality and things being a certain way. And I haven't yet mastered how to communicate that to another person and to find and to identify the right qualities in somebody to make that happen. And my business isn't very formalized yet. I've got a lot of different things laying around. If there are things that could be or need to be automated. I mean, there's definitely lots of things that could be automated, but then instead of doing that work, I say, I'm going to go work on this other new thing. I tend to do that a lot because to me, I just love so much that process of being really curious about something and exploring it and finding some way to make that marketable. But then when it comes to like, all right, we can scale this up now, it doesn't make my brain click.
So is it that kind of not taking the time to kind of document stuff in detail and delegate it? Is that just because you get distracted by new things and shiny objects, and that you're constantly wanting the newness?
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit. I'm definitely a recovering entrepreneur. I readily admit that in some of my blog posts. So there's definitely some shiny object syndrome there. I don't necessarily know if that's bad because I definitely have executed certain things. I'm a big fan of the whole you can't connect the dots moving forward thing. I think that when you follow your curiosity, it leads you to places where when things finally do converge, you're suddenly in the spot where nobody can catch you. And so I'm not in a big hurry. I still try to trust my curiosity.
Nice. Let's talk about let's talk a little bit about the book and the video course. So you have a book called Design for Hackers. Now let's talk about the first thing, and it's a published book, right? You published through Wiley, is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Through Wiley.
So how did that come about? How did the publishing thing come about?
I had gone through maybe a 3-year process of when I stopped working for other people, and I kind of said, like, I'm going to do something that is, I know I have something to offer, but I don't know what it is. And so I explored for 3 years or so. I tried a bunch of different side projects, a bunch of different blog posts and stuff. One of the things I was trying to do during that process was get a talk at South by Southwest. I loved that conference and wanted to talk there. And I had put together a proposal one year and didn't get in. And I was going again to put together a proposal, and I reached into my sort of archives, and I found this Design for the Coder's Mind talk that I had done at a bar camp a few years ago. And I was like, that might be something. That might be something I have the expertise to talk about that. I'd gotten really good at blogging and was getting stuff on the front page of Hacker News relatively often at that point. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to do this talk, Design for Hackers. But I'm not famous, so I've got to get votes. So I said, I'm just going to write the most mind-melting blog post I can possibly come up with. And at the bottom of it, I'll be like, hey, I want to talk about this stuff at South by Southwest. Go vote for my talk. So I spent 2 or 3 weeks crafting this blog post, going over it over and over again, trying to look for the dopamine hits. How do I keep this interesting? And launched it, front page of Hacker News, #1 Hacker News, and got an email from a publisher at Wiley. Wow. And they just said, hey, this looks like a great idea for a book. Would you like to write a book about this?
Wow.
And apparently this publisher, he later said that he had been reading my stuff already, but then when he saw that blog post, he was like, all right, yeah, this is the right thing for this person to pursue as a book.
So did you have a moment where you thought, who the hell am I to write a book called Design for Hackers?
Funny enough, no, actually. I kind of had been, like I said, I when I started out on my own, I really had just this strong sense that, and I don't know, I don't know where it comes from. I'm sure, and I know that a lot of people feel this, where we're just like, I have something to offer. Like, I know that there's something. I just need the space to explore my brain and figure out what it is. And so to me, it was like, I had worked in Silicon Valley for startups, and when I had been an award-winning designer in print previous to that. And when I was in the print world, I was sort of like, why aren't they understanding this interactive stuff better? And then when I was in the startup world, I felt like, oh gosh, they don't really understand this design stuff very well. And then all along that time I was writing. So I was doing these disparate sort of things. This is those dots connecting. These things that were it's just like, when I loved to draw and I decided I was going to make that web page in 1996, those two things didn't have anything to do with each other. And so I pursued all these different interests, and then all of a sudden, when that happened, it was just it was so clear to me that this was the thing to do, and I felt like I was the right person to do it. And I felt like it was the right time for me. It was what I had been waiting for. I purposely didn't have many clients and was able to wind those clients down and completely concentrate on the book. I had passive revenue set up already, so that even though you get a book advance, it's not necessarily enough to go So I was able to dedicate myself entirely to that book through a 6-month writing process. I mean, which is it's really, it was brutal, but I put everything that I had into it, and and for me it was clear like this was the thing for me to do. So I actually I didn't question it too much.
And did you get the talk at South by Southwest?
Funny thing, no, I didn't. I didn't get the talk. But after I got the book deal, then they gave me what was called a book reading, which was like a 20-minute talk, which was fine because I was so busy writing the book. Coming up with an hour-long talk was not something that I was up to. But then the next year, I did do an hour talk, and I got ballroom. It was an 800-person ballroom B, line out the doors, 3 p.m. Saturday time slot. Like it was like right before Google was talking, sort of thing. So like I did eventually achieve that goal.
So now you've written a book. Now they come knocking, huh? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you've got to do some judo a little bit, right? Like you've got to like find some other little anchor that you can, or foothold that you can grab sometimes that'll help you reach this other goal.
You mentioned dopamine hits in the blog post.
Yeah.
How did you learn that stuff? Like, how did you? Did you just read the blog post yourself and say, "Well, I'm tuning out. I'm a little bit bored now. I need to keep it interesting."
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you ask. I've really been fascinated by the brain, especially since I wrote the book, because that was when I was like, I had to use my brain super efficiently, and so I had to really get in touch with, all right, am I feeling creative right now? Now a better time for me to research. And so I'm really interested in listening to my own brain. So yeah, when I read a blog post, I'll go over it and just imagine that I'm reading it for the first time, and I'll be listening for like a little tickle, and I want that tickle to happen over and over again. I want to build up the tension and then release it. But once I release that tension, I want to be able to build up more tension again. And if I can, I just want tension and release all along. And I took a storytelling class here in Chicago as well recently. So now I'm getting better at like actually telling a story and interweaving that with things. And so yeah, and also a lot of like, reading people that I admired, like Seth Godin, Malcolm Gladwell. Who were other, even fiction writers that I read as well. I just remember whenever I read something, just always looking at the pattern, like what's going on here? Why am I interested in this? And then experimenting as I blogged to integrate those things. Because funny story, actually, when I was like 12, I remember reading something from Stephen King where he was saying like, from the time I was a child, I was always just on fire to write. And I remember saying, like, that doesn't make any sense. Writing sucks. I hate writing. And my brother was like, well, the way that you feel about drawing, that's the way he feels about writing. And I was like, yeah, I guess, whatever. So, I mean, if you read my first blog post, if you search for my first blog, Kadavy, it is terrible. It is one run-on paragraph. There is a misspelling. It has no point to it whatsoever. And, just gradually over time, just the dopamine hits for myself and for motivation of just like, I have this living, breathing thing. I can write a blog post. Oh, so many comments. That's a dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Like, continually getting better. And it became something that I grew to love. I mean, I do more writing than I do designing now by a long shot. I do a lot of writing. Most of it never sees the light of day.
Why did you start a blog 10 years ago?
I had been reading a lot of blogs at that time. I think what were the blogs that I was reading? I was reading like Ethan Marcotte, Mesoblue, David. I've actually spoken with him before. But he did the CSS Zen Guard. I remember seeing that. I think it was so cool. I was like so inspired by, Jeffrey Zeldman. I was so inspired by these people that were really pushing the limits on the web, and I just really wanted to like reach out, and I was super intimidated because I didn't understand what a CMS was, and I remember seeing like there's this calendar over on the side and all this stuff, and kind of being like, well, how do you do that? And I just went on a Blogger, and I realized, oh, I can just start a blog, or then that's what the first blog post is about. Like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but maybe I'm going to talk about web design or something, but I sometimes have a tendency to overthink things, and I don't want the perfection paralysis to take over, so I'm just doing this.
This is really good. The paralysis by analysis. Yeah, like this is one of the things that stops so many people from just doing something. And I heard someone said to me the other day, I'm sure it's like an Anthony Robbins quote or something: "Take imperfect action."
Yeah, it's a constant struggle. I struggle with it to this day. Yeah, of not letting some desire for perfection get in the way of actually getting something out there. You know,
why is that? You think? Because do you think it's part? Do you think it like my theory is that our base desire is to feel connected to our tribe, and that putting something out there, our fear is that we might be ridiculed, laughed at, ostracized from the tribe, and we might end up, living in a cave on our own and rotting with no love and no one to pat us on the head. But the truth is, hardly anyone's going to pay attention to what we put out, right?
Yeah, I mean, you should be so lucky that somebody criticizes what you do.
That's right.
But it does happen, and when it happens, it takes some getting used to. You can have hundreds of people send you thank you notes and stuff like that, and then you just get like one negative thing, and it can, it can ruin your day or something. But I don't know. I feel like over time, though, I've grown to enjoy that uncomfortable feeling before hitting publish. Of the like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, what are people going to think about this? It's kind of a rush.
Yeah.
Because I've learned, it's almost like I'm a Pavlovian response. I've learned that means that I'm onto something.
Yeah.
That if you don't feel uncomfortable before you hit publish, even a little embarrassed, you're doing something wrong. You're holding back.
That's right.
And it's such an exciting feeling. Sometimes things are duds, and sometimes people's reactions to things totally surprise you, and it's a positive reaction sometimes. And even when things don't go well, or you get negative feedback that's constructive or something, it makes you better. And you learn to one of the things that I love about entrepreneurship, especially solo entrepreneurship, is that you learn that you can't blame anybody if things don't go your way. And sure, maybe your host, like your host server goes down and it's your host's fault or what. It doesn't matter. The server's down. You are responsible. Or people don't read your blog posts. You're responsible. So you have to figure it out. You can't blame anybody else. There's no scapegoats. You have to own up to it. And so I find that exciting. I find that like there's no better way to really in a market economy improve yourself and reach sort of a kind of self-actualization.
Yeah. I agree. I have this conversation a lot with friends who have jobs, and they say, don't you kind of always feel a little bit insecure about working for yourself because you have no job security? And I'm like, no, it's the opposite for me. Like, why would you put your financial future in someone else's hands? Like, if that person doesn't know how to run a company and they go belly up, you're out of a job. Whereas with me, I've got my hands on the wheel. I trust myself to drive this thing, And so for me, I actually find it very liberating and very exciting.
and speaking of scapegoats, the tough thing for those people also is that they can sit there and think about like, ooh, my life would be so much better and so different if I was just out on my own freelancing. Things would be great. They'll never know if they don't try.
Yeah, that's right.
They can live inside of that fantasy, and it's just going to breed resentment.
Yep.
If they really give it a try and they see the harsh light of reality, they're likely to find some surprises, and they're going to be all the better for it.
Mm. It's funny. Someone said to me once about people paying attention. There've been a whole bunch of studies, but someone was telling me that when you're in a room presenting to like 20 people, only 6 of them are actually paying attention to you at any point in time.
Yeah.
Like half of them are involved in some kind of sexual fantasy with another person in the room in their mind, right? And
yeah.
And what this guy was saying to me was that most people are kind of living their life, or they're living the Hollywood movie version of their life that's playing behind their eyelids. So like, this is the real world, but in their mind, they're Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie in some Hollywood action film, and they're the hero, and everything works out well. And I know that feeling because that's kind of how I used to feel before I went out on my own and started doing my own thing. And now that I just kind of decided, well, I'm just going to live that. I'm going to try and live that movie that's playing behind my eyelids and not kind of, not be stuck in this other thing.
Yeah. Yeah, don't get stuck in your fantasies. Like your reality can be your fantasy.
Yeah. Totally. That was completely off topic, but I thought I just had to share that. Hey, the video course so you write this book and called Design for Hackers. I'm assuming it does pretty well. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and you've got a website set up where you can go, and there's probably the most beautiful opt-in form I've ever seen in my life. Type your email address, sign up in big letters across it. I'll put this in the show notes. 12 weeks of design learning right in your inbox. Oh, and it's free. So how did was the video course a natural progression? And is this for you, is this the start of, well, let's build a suite of paid products that you can then use to monetize your audience? Or what was the thinking behind this?
So I had the book. The book did great. Actually, it debuted in the top 20 on all of Amazon.
Wow.
Which was totally amazing. A lot thanks to the hacker design, the hacker news community really supported it a lot. And it, but over time I started to kind of meet people. They'd be like, "Oh man, I love your book. I bought your book," and then they'd be like, "Well, but I haven't finished reading it yet." And I realized like a book is so, it's just like, here's a book, good luck. All right, now you have to read it. And it seemed like, well, why the relationship doesn't have to be that way. So I developed the 12-week course that you're talking about, and when I first launched it, it was called Summer of Design, and it was over the summer. There was a deadline to sign up and everything, and it was basically just kind of a tidbit based on every chapter, like a lesson. You can't put a whole book in 12 emails, but you can give somebody an idea of these different concepts, and I launched that. That was very successful. It brought my email list from 6,000 people to 30,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was totally explosive. That's one of those things where you hit the publish button. You're like, I don't know how. That completely blew away my expectations. But people responded. People loved it. I mean, it sold a lot of books, which was great. But more than anything, I want the relationship. I want to be in their inbox. I want to be helping them and growing with them and stuff. But yeah, and then the email course is still free. I can't guarantee it's always going to be free because I'm realizing it's a little crazy. But then I made the video course. Actually, the funny thing is the video course, the way that started was because my book is in Polish, Chinese, and Korean. And I've spoken all over Latin America. Mm-hmm. I've spoken in a lot of Spanish-speaking countries, but my publisher hasn't made a Spanish-language book deal. They haven't been able to sell the rights. So I decided I'm going to just do a video course in Spanish. And so I made one chapter worth of it. I got it translated. I went down to Colombia to learn Spanish, and I realized it's really hard to read a chapter in Spanish. So I did it in English. Now, will there be a Spanish one someday? Possibly, probably not, narrated by me. But yeah, then it was just like, oh, well, I'll make a video course in English that people can consume it in video. And that's good because I finally get some more revenue because, when you have a publisher, you don't make a lot of money off the books. Not that I regret having a publisher. And will it be a suite of more products? We'll see. I'm talking to the customers of the current video course. I'll probably launch another iteration of it soon. I only have it open for short amounts of time. And, just trying to figure out what's the next step for helping people and the intersection between that and what I'm interested in. So whether that's a video course or it's a book, I actually don't know for sure. I don't know for sure what the medium is, but I'm sort of in that customer development process of like, all right, what do people need help with? What do I want to help them with? What's the best way to do that?
The thing I like about this is that we talk a lot about building a tribe or building an audience, building a list, and you've just taken like your biggest, most platinum piece of content and given it away for free, and that's exploded your audience. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because it seemed to make total sense to me, but I was surprised how many people were just like, whoa, that's free? That's crazy.
Yeah. But now you have this relationship with this audience that you can talk to and work out what it is they want next. So the Colombia thing, is this, because I'm reminded Conrad Agusa is the guy that actually suggested that we reach out to you. So is that how you know Conrad, through your trip to Colombia?
That is, yeah. I went and lived I've lived a couple mini lives in Colombia. I've gone down to Medellin the last couple winters and lived there for a couple months, practice Spanish, take some salsa lessons, do some work, enjoy the nice weather. That's how I met Conrad.
Awesome.
So,
well, thank you, Conrad, for connecting us, and I'll be sure to send a link of this interview to Conrad. Hey, fabulous. We should probably do the elevation round, which is our lightning round.
I got salsa lessons.
Yeah. So this is our quick questions and answers for freelancers. As you know, WP Elevation is here to help WordPress consultants build a better business. So I'm going to drill through quick questions here off the top of your head. What's the number one thing any freelancer or consultant needs to know?
Learn to understand the value that you're providing to your clients and charge accordingly.
Awesome. Love it. What's the best thing you've ever done to find new customers?
Blogging about things that I know. That's how I got, my main big client when I was freelancing was Odesk. I wasn't an Odesk freelancer, just I was freelancing for Odesk. And that was because I wrote a blog post about the Garrett IA library, and one of the designers at Odesk found the blog post and found me, and, just demonstrate your expertise.
Yep. Love it. How do you stop competing on price?
Goes back to understanding the value that you're providing for your particular client. And also, I would say being selective about the type of clients that you want and building a relationship with them so that you're like their trusted partner. You're not just some vendor.
Yeah, nice. I like that distinction. Any tips on writing better proposals?
Give options. Basic, premium, super duper premium. Allows the anchoring. Gives them something visual. Give them something visual to look at. Really communicate that you understand what their problem is and the different ways that you can help them with it.
Nice. Favorite tool or system for CRM?
I used Highrise.
Oh yeah.
To get when I was doing the book, I had to request copyright permission for all the assets in the book. So that's what I used to keep track of all that.
Nice. What's the best way to keep a project and a client on track?
I think you're really sitting down and coming up with whatever way that you can to visualize the different phases of things. I sometimes will go into a Google spreadsheet. I do this for my own, like for the video project I did this, and just like breaking it down and just using the spreadsheet instead of having to worry about like, how do I go put this in the base camp? It doesn't fit my brain. I don't really get it. Coming with some visual way of representing it, and then from that extrapolating, all right, now we've got these dates and I can start telling people when they're accountable.
Nice. I like the plain old spreadsheets. I like it. Any ideas for getting referrals from existing customers?
Be great and ask.
What was the first bit? Be great.
Be great and ask for the referral. Actually, I think that if you want things in life, sometimes asking is pretty amazing.
I particularly like be great. I particularly like that for advice. Just be great.
Yeah. Meet all of your deadlines, deliver exactly what you say you're going to do, and be that trusted partner.
Yeah. And final question, what's the number one thing you can do to differentiate yourself?
I'm a big fan of curiosity and following those things that interest you a lot that maybe don't make a lot of sense right now, but then eventually they converge with your business, and that's when you're in it. That's when you're dangerous.
I like it.
Because who can keep up with somebody who loves what they do?
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, apart from the fact that your camera looks a lot better than mine, I'd love to thank you for this interview. For those of you who are
my apologies about the camera.
If you're not watching this, if you're just listening to this on an iPod or something, you have to go and watch the video on the website because David's camera is just absolutely gorgeous and you've inspired me to get one. It's the Logitech C920. I'll put that in the show notes. Competition. We're giving away a copy, or you're giving away a copy of your book, Designed for Hackers.
Yes.
Now, we want to know... Well, in fact, you tell us. What is how? So we're going to get our listeners and viewers to leave some comments under the video and tell us what.
Yes. I would really love to know from your listeners if you could learn design, if you could make your understanding of design better, whether it's because you are going to be doing the design and you're just going to understand it better. What would that mean to you? Like how would that help you doing what you're doing with your business?
There you go. Leave your comments underneath the video and I'll get David to swing by in a couple of weeks and award the prize. Sound good?
Great.
Cool, man. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us here. What's the future? Where are you going to be in 12 months' time? What are you going to be doing, do you think?
Oh, goodness. I wish I could tell you. Hopefully, I think that people should just stay tuned. If they take my course, they'll be on my email list. They'll hear all about it. I'm playing around with a lot of different exciting stuff, but it's all so preliminary right now that I couldn't even speculate.
Cool. Well, that sounds like a good prompt to get over to designforhackers.com, or it's actually Kadavy.net, right?
Well, Kadavy.net is my blog, and then designforhackers.com is the book's site.
Gotcha.
That has the email course on it. However, it's all one email list.
Gotcha. So get on over to designforhackers.com and sign up for that free email course while it's still free, and while David's still crazy, and then you'll be able to find out what David's doing and what's coming up in the future, and hopefully you might be able to give him some input and feedback into what he should be doing.
Yeah,
awesome.
I'd love to hear anything that I can help with.
Hey, where can people reach out and say thanks for this?
I'm pretty active on Twitter at Kadavy. That's K-A-D as in David, A-V as in Victor, Y. I'm also David at Kadavy.net. And those are the main places.
Beautiful. Finally, who would you like me to try and interview and why?
Ooh. I recently did a great webinar with Brennan Dunn.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you've interviewed him already.
Yeah, he was actually episode number 1.
Oh, really?
He was the very first on this podcast, yeah.
Oh, wow. Does that still count as an answer?
Well, I should probably get Brennan back on at some point because a lot's changed in the last year and a bit since I interviewed him.
Oh, was that before he had his W freelance rate course?
I think he had the book, but now he's got the course, so it was before the course.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and we actually had him on he was a guest presenter on a members webinar that we ran recently for our WP Elevation members, like a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, he's total expert in client relations. I stole all of my answers from him.
Yeah. He's awesome. All right, well, there you go, Brennan. I'm going to come and get you again, and thanks to David Kadavy. So keep your eyes on your inbox. And if there's anyone else you think of, feel free to shoot me an email or tweet me, man, and I'll make sure I get them on.
Right.
Thank you very much for your time once again. I really appreciate it. It's been long and epic. You need to go and do some salsa classes. Yeah, take care, and I look forward to seeing how it all unrolls.
Thank you, Troy.
Thanks, man.